Welcome to the Beyond You podcast, where we have real conversations about healing, trusting yourself again, and building the kind of relationships that actually feel good. I'm Samantha, and if you've ever felt like you're just going through the motions, like you're doing all the right things but still feeling disconnected, you're in the right place. Because here we go beyond the surface, beyond the hurt, beyond the patterns that keep you stuck. So take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let's get into it. Welcome to the Beyond You podcast. And I'm your host, Samantha, and we are talking about this comparison trap that we find ourselves in constantly because it's an exhausting game of comparison, the pressure of living someone else's timeline. But how many times do we see it on our everyday with things that we see on TV and in media? And it's a lot. And so I just want you to think about, have you ever felt, no, let me know if I'm alone in this too. You felt like you're behind in life, like you're checking all the boxes, doing everything right, or what we feel like is right, but somehow you're still not where you thought you'd be. Maybe you see someone celebrating their engagement, a six-figure business, or moving into their dream home, and instead of being happy for them, that little voice starts to creep in. Why not me? What am I doing wrong? If you've ever felt that sting, know that I see you and I promise you that you are not alone. So today we're unpacking this timeline trap, that pressure to have life figured out by a certain age. Because it is a lot. And I hear a lot of individuals that I work with that go through this. I know I've been through this. And we're going to talk about where this expectation comes from, why it messes with our peace, and most importantly, how to let go of comparison and actually start trusting your own path. And just last week, I found myself scrolling through social media, seeing announcements about promotions, engagements, new homes, and for a split second, a familiar voice crept in. Should I be further along? Am I behind? Maybe you've heard this voice too. And that's exactly what we're unpacking today and why we get caught up in this comparison trap, how it steals our peace, and most importantly, I want to be able to break free and create a life that's aligned with our authentic timeline and not someone else's expectations. And so with this comparison trap, what it really looks like in our daily lives. Because that moment when you're scrolling through Instagram, seeing someone celebrating a major career milestone and suddenly your own accomplishments feel small. Not because they actually are, but because in that moment, comparison has stolen your perspective. Or when you hear about a friend who's younger than you getting engaged, buying a house, having a baby, hitting all those markers, and that voice whispers, "What's wrong with me? Should I be there by now?" Or maybe it's in professional settings. Seeing colleagues advance, watching others receive recognition, and questioning if you're falling behind on someone invisible racetrack. And a lot of times we don't realize and now this comparison trap really starts early, right? Since we were kids, we've been fed this idea that success follows a predictable path. Uh, and let me know if I'm wrong in this, right? Graduate by this age, get married by that age, have kids, have one and a half kids, a boys and a girl, right? It's this constant comparison. Buy a house, retire happy. And if you're a woman, especially a Black woman, there's this extra layer of pressure to not only follow the timeline, but to overachieve while doing it. We've taught, we've been constantly taught to be strong, to be resilient, to secure the bag, whatever you want to put in there, but also secure the man and do it all while making it look effortless. Right? I know men go through this too. So no wonder why we feel like we're behind when things don't go as planned. And a lot of times we don't realize on how social media plays such a big role in this. And know that when it comes to social media, we're seeing this constant things about everyone's highlights that makes us feel like something's wrong with what we're going through, and the scrolling that we're constantly doing it makes you feel like we're just failing in life at times. And it's easy to forget that what we see online is just a highlight reel, like I was saying, but understand that we see the wins, the perfect pictures, the success stories, but we don't see the struggle, the breakdowns, or the moments of doubt that happen behind the scenes. And you might see someone posting their engagement ring, but you don't see the years of heartbreak it took for them to find the right person, Or you see someone in their dream job, but you don't see the nights they spent crying because they hated their last one. Social media isn't real life, but when you're in a vulnerable space, I understand that it feels real. And so understand that uh, for a long time, I thought I had to have love figured out by a certain point in my life. I was engaged, and after a moment, it felt like I was finally on track, right? Especially after the divorce. And I understand, like, I was checking off all the boxes that said, you found your person, moving to the next level. But then when the relationship ended, it felt like all those expectations came crashing down. And I had to face the fact that my life wasn't going to the plan I thought it would go. And let me tell you, that realization is humbling. It makes you question yourself at times, especially in the beginning, which is normal. And it makes you wonder if you'll ever catch up. But we have to understand that breaking free from something that wasn't right for me was actually setting me up for something better. And a lot of times in the beginning part, we just can't see it. We're so wrapped up into the judgments of others and what people will think without thinking about that the reason why you make the choices for yourself is because it is what feels right for you. And that's important enough. And so, what we don't understand that we have no idea what anyone's journey actually has looked like. Right? I didn't know about the family support or lack thereof someone has or have had or received, or how they receive their down payment, or any one relationship. I didn't know about anyone's career struggles, or we don't know any about someone's career struggles, or they're privately facing something. A lot of times I was just comparing behind the scenes from someone's highlight reel. And that's exactly what comparison often does. It has us measuring our most vulnerable truths against others' most polished presentations. And so, what we're going to do is we're going to just break down why this timeline trap is so powerful, especially for just people of color in general, right? A lot of times we have this cultural script. We're handed these unspoken timelines from everywhere, right? The success by 30 or 20 or 40 or 50, like there's all these expectations that makes turning whatever age you want to insert there feel like a deadline to set up a birthday, right? If you turn 30, this is what's supposed to happen. You turn 40, this is what's happening. You turn 50, like it goes on and on. And the relationship milestones we're supposed to hit in a specific order, the career ladder that doesn't account for different starting points or systematic barriers. I mean, we got to be thinking about the achievements that supposedly come in a neat linear progression. We have this timeline myth consistently that's kind of pushed on us through media, through just society that you know, places on us. But understand that nobody lets us know that these timelines were really created by just people of color in mind. They don't account for different starting points, different support systems, different challenges. They're often based on privileged paths that assume equals access and opportunity. So we have to really think about just what works for you and then the system of you and system of what you want to do with your life. And then also understand with this social media magnifier that keeps happening, which I mentioned before. I just want to break down a little bit more on this, is understand that social media intensifies this pressure, right? We see carefully curated moments of success without the years of struggle, right? Algorithms literally push achievement content because it drives engagement. And every milestone gets amplified while the everyday journey remains invisible. And I want you to think about it. Notice on when someone posts a engagement or a marriage or starting a business, it gets so many likes or comments or different things, but just the everyday struggle doesn't get as much. And so understand that the context, the support, the privilege, the timing factors all get edited out in this. And so I realized that I noticed in myself how quickly my peace can be disrupted by a 30-second scroll. I know. And we don't even realize when it happens. And I used to really understand when it's happening because I wouldn't think a tale about relationships or a tale about a baby or travel. But then if I go on Instagram or anything and I just look and all of a sudden it doesn't happen right then and there. Later on, I'm like, I wonder where I'll travel to, or oh, I mean, I may do miss a relationship. I wasn't thinking anything about it. It's only when I'm scrolling or in that place that it starts to come up for me. And let me know if this comes up for you too, right? If you're nodding your head, or let me know in the comments. because one minute I'm content with my path, the next I'm questioning everything, and all because I saw someone else's highlight reel without their backstory. And so we don't realize the internal pressure that's beyond our external factors because there's that voice inside that says things like, people are judging me for not being further along. Or it says, I'm running out of time to achieve what matters. Or then my path should look like hers, his, theirs, or whoever that is. Like, or we just kind of have that voice telling us that my timeline isn't impressive enough. And for many of us, especially women of color, there's that added layer, the pressure to not just succeed for yourself, but to represent something larger, to prove something, to be exceptional, just to be considered equal at times. And understand that success looks different for everyone. Some people find their dream career at 25, others at 45. Some people get married young, others find their true love after divorce. Some people become financially stable early, while others take years to figure it out. There's no right time for anything. The idea that you're behind is based on a standard that was never real to begin with. And so we don't realize that detours often lead to the best outcomes. Okay, so think about a time in your life when you didn't get what you wanted. Maybe you didn't get the job, the relationship, the opportunity. And now looking back, you realize it was the best thing that could have happened. I've had clients who felt like failures because they left a toxic marriage or got laid off from a job, only to realize later that those moments forced them to create a life they actually love. But in the moment, it feels like everything is falling apart. And so instead of asking, why am I behind? I want you to be able to ask, what am I being prepared for? The season you're in is shaping you. You're learning resilience, self trust, and clarity. And when the right thing does come, you'll actually be ready for it. Not just because it's the same imaginary timeline, or not because it's on someone else's imaginary timeline or what society feels like your timeline should be, but because you've done that inner work. And so what I want us to do is just talk about what comparison is actually costing us, because it's more than just occasional bad feelings. Understand that it's also, at first, it's like a peace price, right? Constant anxiety about falling behind, the inability to create and celebrate current achievements, difficulty being present in your actual life. Peace becomes conditional on achievement, and that's exhausting, right? We're so worried about what the boss will think or supervisor will think to make us feel at peace, when peace should just come from you, when you just know you're on a timeline. If you want to do something, go ahead and do it. If you don't feel like doing something, go ahead and do something else. Like, know that you always have a choice in whatever you decide to do. And next, what it does cost us is authenticity. And I'm talking about the density tax next week in that episode, because that's a whole episode within itself, talking about just showing up as you. But making choices based on others' timelines and not your authentic path. What we're doing is we're rushing important decisions to keep up, downplaying your actual desires to fit the expected path of somebody else. And also you are losing touch with what success actually means to you, which I believe we talked about in the Beyond the Grind episode. So I see this so clearly in my own journey. Times when I made decisions, not because they were right for me, but because they were on schedule. In looking back, those are really the choices that brought me peace or fulfillment. So what I want us to also realize, there's also this future focus trap that we kind of get ourselves wrapped up into, living in a constant state of not yet, or not enough, or not yet enough. I'll put it all together, because we're missing the beauty of your current season, treating the present as merely preparation for some real future, or the habit of perpetual dissatisfaction. When we're caught in comparison, we're never actually living our lives, we're just assessing them. We're not participants, we're often critics to ourselves, and that's in no way to create a life of authentic peace. And that's what we are here and all about, right? Just creating that peace for ourselves in our everyday life. And so, what I want you to do to break free from this comparison and get this comparison cured, make sure you get your notes, your journal ready, because I want to be able to do this with you because we are going to help to really figure out on what helps break free from the cycle because that's what matters most. So here are practical strategies that have transformed my relationship with comparison. Of course, take what you need and leave the rest, but I find that this definitely helps me out when I'm getting in this comparison space. And so first, I want you to identify your triggers, right? What do you feel most behind? Is it when you're scrolling at family gatherings, when you hear someone else's success story? And be honest, like no one's looking at your paper here. I know for me, when I talked about earlier, I notice is when me scrolling. If I hear some success stories, I'm not really tripping. It's only when I find that I am scrolling is when I think about stuff I haven't even thought about, right? So write that down for yourself. Next, once you know your triggers, you can shift your response, whether that's limiting social media, like for me, limit social media. I will not go longer. I make sure to prepare my algorithm the way I want it to go. Only comment on the ones that actual feel inspired by it. So I'm not in so much in the relationships overall space or because if I, if there's in a relationship or you're in one, you want to be able to have tips on things, but not just so focus on people's highlight reels of pictures of their relationships, right? We start comparing to other people when we do that. Sometimes for others, it's like practicing self affirmations or reminding yourself that everyone's timeline is different. Like, take what you need. I know beginning of things, and what I tell people a lot of times when you're first starting something is sometimes just writing post-it notes that you're seeing. Like I know when I first started even just doing private practice or building just a business overall, I used to have something on my post-it that just says like take up space, right? I think in the corporate world, I was so used to just minimizing myself. And I know you guys probably are, some of you guys deal with this right now. I've heard a lot about that this week, that it's so used to minimizing how I felt in that space because you weren't allowed to take up too much because it was predominantly in just Caucasian culture. And so I had to put something that said take up space. So I didn't forget that I can take up as much space as I need to because I find myself minimizing at first and not allowing to be my authentic self. And now, you know, um, taking up space comes naturally more and more spaces as they kind of own that. So you can decide on what that fits for you. So once you identify your triggers, then I want you to be able to flip the narrative. So instead of I should be further along, say something like I'm exactly where I need to be. And instead of falling behind, try something like my path is unique and I trust it. Okay. And then we're going to reduce comparison exposure. Okay. So I want you to be able to curate your environment to help you out, right? You want this to be able to help you in all aspects. So if social media makes you feel less than, mute or unfollow those accounts. Protect your peace, right? And whatever that looks like, if you find that it's success stories, maybe in this meantime, just reduce the amount of success stories that you're hearing, just for the moment, until you just kind of feel just that tune and then on your path, right? Like you get to be able to decide on what that is for you. Next, I want you to own your unique path. Define success on your terms. What actually makes you feel fulfilled, not what society says you should, which we talked about in that episode of Beyond the Grind, but what actually makes you feel fulfilled. And then I want you to journal prompt, right? I love a good journal, right? So if I removed all outside pressure, what would I truly want for my life? And really thinking about that. Okay, and so now we're going to go into the timeline reclamation first. Okay, we need to consciously reclaim our right to our own timing. And I don't think we think about it how we need to be able to do this because I feel like we don't give ourselves permission to evolve or to be ourselves. So this is going to be great, right, as you do this. So recognize that there is no universal timeline that applies to everyone. Also understand that different starting points lead to different journeys. And then I want you to acknowledge the specific factors in your unique story. And then we're going to take it back to the first season 2, episode 1. Give yourself permission to move at your authentic pace. And it took me years to realize that my path was never meant to look like anyone else's. So I don't want you to make it seem like, oh, just you just thought about it and that was it. No, that is not the case at all. The detours that seemed like delays were actually essential parts of my growth. The timing that felt behind was perfectly aligned with who I needed to become. As each time I thought I was doing well, it was always more to learn, right? And it just also shows that healing is definitely a journey. It's not some destination that we think it should be. So please be able to learn, evolve in this journey, right? And so understand the context practice. When comparison hits, add these crucial questions. If you need to write it down, please take some time to do that, okay? So what don't I know about their journey? And sometimes just kind of writing it out helps you put things in perspective, and that's why I'm saying it. So answer that first question. And then I want you to answer what support systems might be invisible here, right? And this is when comparison hits. And think about what challenges have I faced that might be unique to my path? Or what's the full context behind this highlight I'm seeing? When I catch myself comparing, whether it's business or when I'm focused of comparing in relationships, whatever that is, I actively remind myself, I don't know how many attempts they made before succeeding. I don't know what connections they started with. I don't even know what their private struggles look like. So what am I looking like going to someone else's timeline to how they are? But I tell you, when I hear basis on what when we hear people's biographies or people started later in life or started earlier or everyone has their own unique story when it comes to stuff. I've heard people who had great marriages. I heard people that, are have the fully 25 years, but those 25 years were really a lot for them. So you want to be able to understand that you don't know what's going on in someone's life and to choose what's best for you. There's no certain way to be. It's just as long as you're good with it, we're good. We're good here if you're good with it, right? If you like it, I love it is my motto. Yeah. So know that the presence return, right? So this is about bringing yourself back to your life. When comparison pulls you into someone else's story, I need you to gently return to your own. Okay, practice noticing what's actually going on, what's actually going well on your path. Focus on your personal growth, not relative position, right? Celebrate your progress against your previous self, not against others. So, the most powerful question I've learned to ask myself, am I comparing or am I creating? A lot of times when I'm creating, I'm not worried about what no one else is doing. Because every moment spent in comparison is a moment not spending building my actual life, right? The time where you want to rest, that you get to do what you need to do for yourself, like allowing yourself to really create it towards you and your space. So then I want you to be able to really think about creating your authentic timeline, okay? And so with this created authentic timeline, I want it to be something that actually aligns with your soul, not society's expectations. And so the values alignment, instead of following prescribed milestones, ask what actually matters deeply to me, right? What kind of life am I trying to create? What pace supports my well being? And also, what sequence actually makes sense for my goals? When I really got clear on my true values, I realized that some traditional milestones weren't even on my authentic path. Others were, but in a different order to time or timeline than a conventional script. Right? And so also recognize the season recognition, learning to honor where you actually are. Each season of life has its own purpose. Some seasons are for building, others are for resting. Some are for exploration, others are for implementation. Your current season is neither behind nor ahead. It's exactly where you're meant to be. And so also know that the success redefinition makes a difference too. So I want to make sure I touch on that because we want to be able to create metrics that actually matter. Okay. So what matters is how aligned you feel with your authentic self. Again, there is no right or wrong way to be. It's just what fits for you, what fits for your system and you, yourself, and your relationships. Also, the quality of your peace and presence. That is what actually matters. The depth of your meaningful connections and the integrity of your choices. As long as you wake up and you feel good about you, that's all I care about, right? The most liberating moment in my journey came when I realized success isn't a specific achievement by a specific age. It's the progressive alignment of my outer life with my inner truth, right? So you got to make sure that lines up. So I want you to be able to celebrate yourself, be around a community that you need. I want you to be able to limit the social media reset. Sometimes we need to like wait a little bit, right? Like maybe maybe a detox for you or whatever that looks like for you. And so know that you got to be able to like take what you can use, right? So sometimes having a catchphrase like different journey, different timeline, when you see things that you might want to compare yourself to, but you're like, okay, I'm not doing that. Maybe sometimes a catchphrase works, asking yourself reality questions and sometimes work out as well. Like, what's actually true about my journey right now? And what don't I know about their journey? And will this comparison matter in 5 years, right? And see, you can pick which one works for you because not all of these will kind of go toward each situation, but I just want you to just kind of keep these in mind. Okay. And so I want it to be just creating your comparison free zone for yourself. And so I want you to be able to create space in your life where comparison doesn't get to show up. Okay. So the achievement free zone. Pick one area of your life where achievement and timeline pressure don't get to enter. For me, if it's whether creative writing, it's not about publishing platform or success. It's just for the joy of creating. So think about what that is for you. So what could be your achievement free zone? Maybe it's a hobby you do just because you love it. Maybe it's time with certain friends where you never talk about work or goals. Maybe it's a morning routine that's just about peace, not productivity. Or it could be a creative practice with no outcome expectations. So understand that when we sometimes remove that feeling of having to achieve something, when I remove all the achievement pressure from my writing, guess what happened? I actually enjoyed it again. And ironically, I started with writing more consistently because it wasn't a task to check off. And when I'm talking about writing, I'm talking about journaling, not like fully wrote writing. So just whatever comes up in my mind. But I think there's times where if it's not like written in a certain notebook, we get feel a certain way. It's not achievable. But I think it's different ways. Sometimes write in my notebook, sometimes I'm typing it out. So it's whatever is coming up in my mind, being able to get out of my mind and get it on paper is what's important. And so also know, just understand what society's timeline and your authentic timeline. So really paying attention to what feels right for you. Okay. And so here's what I want you to remember when we close this episode and you go back into your day. The only timeline that matters is the one that honors your journey, not the one society handed you, not the one you saw on social media, not even the one your well meaning family might expect from you. Your life isn't behind schedule. You haven't missed some cosmic deadline. There's no universal timeline you're all supposed to follow. You're beyond you challenge this week. I want you to notice when comparison shows up. Awareness is the first step. And then I want you to create your comparison, whether it's your catchphrase, something you're going to tell yourself during those moments where it starts to come up. Whether it's, I remember I said earlier, different journey, different timeline. It could be something of, I don't know what's going on behind closed doors, whatever fits for you that you want to take to do that. Also, those reality check questions that we talked about earlier of like, do you know what's happening behind closed doors? What feels right for you? Just checking in with yourself before that spiral starts. And also, know that you can share your journey, not just your highlights. It doesn't have to be on social media, but just with people in general. I think a lot of times we go with some people go differently. Some people go, oh, what's going well all the time. Some people go, what's not going well all the time. I think it's both. You can have both, and let's choose one or the other. And I used to think I was behind in so many areas, but when I started honoring my authentic timeline, I realized I wasn't behind. I was actually where I needed to become who I meant to be. And if you're ready to go just deeper, just continue to follow us. Make sure you share with somebody who needs this, who finds themselves consistently comparing or getting upset at what they see around them. And know that we have different platforms over YouTube, TikTok, that we kind of be able to share different tips as well. But I want you to make sure you know that we come back every Wednesday to just be able to show up for you. And if you have any questions, make sure to let me know in the comments. Make sure to follow, share so someone else really sees this and Share with a friend or two so we can make sure that we get out to more people. I am so excited for you. Until then, remember your timeline is yours, your journey is yours, and the comparison voice, it does not get to steal your peace anymore. Your path is perfectly yours.